What's up, guys? It's Agent What If, and I'm back again with another video. This is what if Deku was a true summoner, as the video entails. So, yeah, without a few things, I just want to make a few things clear. As of this moment, we are only 45 subscribers away from getting 1,000 subscribers. So if you're watching this video, make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to like the video again. Like, just keep liking it forever. Tell your grandma, tell everybody, so that they can get it in the algorithm and many more people can see this, so they can join the agency, as I call it. I'm probably have to find another name for it, but if you guys like it, I'm cool with it. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. We start off with Izuku just being a normal kid for relatively most of his life. Hisashi left, like in canon, and unfortunately for young Izuku, Inko was not far behind, except she didn't leave, she ended up dying. Inko was working herself to death. She had to work extraordinarily hard to provide for her son and herself, considering that they lived in a fairly decent neighborhood, in a fairly decent household, and they had a lot of things that they couldn't pay for without the second income coming from Hisashi. A child, Izuku was just really having to watch his mother pretty much kill herself from working so hard, barely getting anything to eat, not really sleeping. It was just a lot for a child to handle, and a lot for anybody to handle in general. This eventually caught up to Inko, as she ended up dying from overworking, and her body just couldn't handle the stress, and it gave out. Izuku was at the funeral. He had no relatives who currently lived anywhere near them, so he was pretty much on his own. Izuku had pretty much two options after the funeral was over. Either he was going to go to the to a foster home if he got adopted, or he was just going to sit there in the foster home for the rest of time. Or I forget what it's called, but the orphanage, I'm pretty sure it's called. Izuku didn't really like either of his options, but he knew he had to make a decision, and quickly. After the funeral, people were going to come to him, people who worked for the government, and they were going to pretty much just take him so that they could put him in an orphanage. Izuku decided that this wasn't the best course of action, but he couldn't really do anything. At this point, Izuku was about 3 years old. Izuku knew that this was not the option for him, but it was the only option he could take. He was 3 years old. He wasn't exactly able to live on his own yet, and he knew this was the only option he had, so he took it. He allowed them to take him to the orphanage without much fuss and without much fight. He pretty much just went along with everything they said, because he didn't really want to get into a confrontation. He'd always been a peaceful child. Izuku was raised for the next year in the orphanage without much difficulty, seeing as Izuku was a nice child and didn't start any problems with anyone. The only problem was that Izuku never really liked staying there, and whenever foster parents would come to the orphanage, he would always make sure to hide himself because he didn't want to get adopted. He thought it would be a disgrace to his mother's legacy if he allowed himself to be with another family to be happy. As we now catch up, we have a 4-year-old Izuku currently hiding away somewhere. We don't really know where, in the orphanage, as a wave of wanting parents comes through the orphanage looking. Izuku's hiding, and he's thinking to himself, I can't. I just can't. I'll be in here for a long while because I just can't. And that's all I know, and that's all I care about. Izuku then stays there thinking to himself, and he remembers, oh yeah, quirks. Wait, do I have a quirk? I mean, I might. I'm pretty sure my mother had one, and it's possible. Izuku then thinks to himself, his quirk could be his way out of here, especially if it was a good one. Izuku thought and thought and thought, and he couldn't really think of anything else. He knew that there was no real way to know if you had a quirk unless it manifested on its own. He was about the right age, but it hadn't came yet, so he wondered if it was already there. Izuku waited a while for all of the parents to leave, and for the orphanage to pretty much go into to go to sleep for the night, the entirety of the orphanage. Izuku snuck out, as most children did, and he wasn't caught. He went out to the streets back behind them and found his way into the forest. Let's say the orphanage is close to a forest, kind of like if you ever watched or read what is it called? I cannot even remember. Lost Neverland, right? Like kind of like that grassy plains area, like kind of like that. Izuku went into the forest and decided that he needed to know if his quirk worked, if he had a quirk, because this could be life-changing. He went on into the woods not really knowing what he was going to do, so he just walked around. Eventually, as the night grew longer, he realized it was getting late. He needed to go back inside before anyone noticed he was gone, or it would spell more trouble than he already had, and he couldn't afford that right now. He began making his way out, not really having achieved anything on this little excursion, but Izuku then realizes he's lost. He's really lost. It's in the dead of night, he can't see a thing, and he's in a forest. How is this a good idea? Izuku starts thinking to himself while slightly panicking, what do I do? How do I get out of here? Wait, calm down, think. Izuku sits down underneath the tree, thinking to himself, okay, what do I do? I'm in a forest, we know that. On either my left or my right is a way out of here. How do I know which? Think. Right. It can't be that far away. Must be within vision. Probably the trees obstructing my vision. Any vantage points? Look. And Izuku saw a tree. He thought to himself a string of luck. Maybe his life wasn't that bad. Izuku, a year after his parents dying, began to become more of an outside child, considering he didn't want to be inside because, well, it's not very entertaining or very nice at all in an orphanage in the inside. Even if it is nice, it's still not nice in the important ways. So Izuku found himself going outside, which is why he knows how to climb trees. He climbs the biggest tree he can find and looks to both his left and his right. He notices that on his right, there seems to be a city. He thinks to himself, I found it. Now I just need to head in that direction. Hopefully I can get there quickly. He starts climbing down a tree and he gets to the ground and starts walking. He keeps on walking, but before long his little body gets tired and he starts giving way to sleep. Izuku starts falling to the ground, almost asleep, when he's caught by someone. He doesn't know what's going on, and his eyes are so heavy, they're closed. He wants to go to sleep, and that's when we cut to when Izuku was inside the orphanage on his bed, awake. Izuku did not know what just happened, considering he did not bring himself anywhere since he was asleep. But he wasn't going to keep acting like this. He didn't want anyone to know anything, so he just acted normal for the most part. He didn't know what happened, but somebody knew he was out there. Izuku thought to himself, did someone out here save me? Impossible. Now, no one knew I was gone, so they wouldn't know to look for me. Maybe a hero? I guess. Well, why would a hero be in the forest? Maybe someone knew I was gone. But again, not possible. And Izuku's immediately spared from his thoughts by one of his friends. We'll call him... I don't really know what to call him, since this person is going to really be important to the story. He's just a random kid who sits and eats with Izuku sometimes. The kid asks Izuku if he's okay. He looks a bit shaken up. Izuku says he's fine and begins to walk away. The kid follows him, bugging him for a bit, as the kid finally makes his way away from Izuku. Izuku then pretty much just walks around, not really saying anything, when he thinks to himself, wait. Did I get a quirk? Do I have a quirk? I wonder. He goes over to the head mother of the orphanage and pretty much asks her, how do I get a quirk test? And the mother says, well, naturally they cost money. And do you have any money? Azuku then does not nod, saying, "No, I do not have any money." She then says, "Well, you can't get one right away, but we might be able to get one for you if we can get some funding, so sit tight." Azuku smiles and says to himself, "Of course, why would it be that easy?" But quirk tests exist. We know that. What do they do in those procedures? Azuku then starts every night sneaking out and going to anywhere where they keep computers open. He starts researching and he finds out what they do to do a quirk assessment test. He just does that. And the only thing that happens is Azuku gets a mark on his hand and nothing else. Azuku wonders if he has some kind of ink power. He thinks that that's probably not the best thing, but probably can be used. He continues thinking on and on and on until again he hears someone behind him. Azuku turns around quickly, looking, daring daggers at whatever is out there. He yells for the person to come out, and the person slowly begins to step out, saying, "Of course, master," kneeling on the one knee. It's a person with brown hair and yellow eyes. It's a guy. He's pretty tall, with a kind of slender build, not really too muscular, not really too non-muscular. He looks up at him and says, "Azuku, or master if you prefer. I am what you would call a summon." Azuku asks him, what's a summon? And he says, "Of course, master. I'll explain. Follow me." Azuku's a bit hesitant, seeing as this person who just came out of the bushes is asking him to follow him. The person then bows his head, saying, "I'm sorry if I startled you, master, but I promise I mean you no harm." Azuku eventually follows the man, and they go deeper into the forest. Then, that's when the man starts to explain. "Okay, what you are is a summoner. Before you ask questions, allow me to finish. So, what does a summoner do? Well, they summon things, or people, like me. Summons have special abilities that are inherent to only them. You summon from a different realm, kind of like using your life force to make it like a hand and grab them and bring them to your plane of existence to help you in, well, your endeavors." So Azuku says, "You're pretty much my friend." And he begins to try to say something, but then Azuku grows a smile on his face, and the man stops, saying, "Yeah, I guess you could consider it that." "So how does this work?" Azuku asks. The man says, "Well, whenever that mark appears on your hand, that means that your summons are available. Now, of course, you can talk to your summons once you summon them telepathically, but you can also come to the plane in which you take them, but only in short bursts, not for really long periods of time." Azuku asks, "Well, what can you do?" And the man goes on a long tangent, but eventually just gets around to saying there are about 50 or so different types of summons you can summon, not excluding the most powerful of them, of course. That's an entirely different bracket. There's multiple brackets. Most of us have one or two abilities, like what I am. I can shapeshift and I can use telekinesis. Those are my two abilities. And of course I have enhanced senses, strength, reflexes, durability, stamina, and regenerative abilities. Azuku then says that was a lot. And he says, "Pretty much your regular superhero." And then Azuku smiles, saying, "So, wait, could you adopt me?" And the man blinks, saying, "What? I mean, you're my master, but I am here to help you, so if that's what you want. But I can't be here all the time. You don't have the stamina for it." But before Azuku could say anything else, he fell face first, being really tired. And then the man says, yeah, I thought that might happen. You can't keep me here for long. I'll bring you back to the orphanage. But we can discuss this further." Over the next few months, Azuku began talking to this figure, who he named Gray. Seeing as his personality was kind of dull when Azuku wasn't really entertaining the conversation, he wouldn't speak, he wouldn't blink, he would just kind of sit there in silence. He thought that his appearance and personality was quite gray, So that's what he decided to name him. And of course, he accepted it like it was his God-given name and just continued on. They kept talking as Izuku kept summoning Gray and getting his timer to how long he could keep it summoned up and up. It only went up in 15-second increments, but it was a slow process. At this point, Izuku was about 5 years old. It's been about a couple months. He can now hold a summon in his plane of reality for about 5 minutes, and there's no timer on how many he can summon or how frequently, but there is a timer on how long he can keep them here. So yes, Izuku then organized a plan with Gray for Gray to pretend to be a human and come adopt him, and Gray would find ways to get money. Since Gray has superhuman strength and durability, he can do some of the more dangerous jobs and only work a little bit, but continue to, do things. And since Gray can only be, around in 5-minute increments, Izuku would have to be there, but, Gray can just pretend to slip away for like half a second, disappear from people's vision, disperse, and then come back to keep working. They kept this going on, and Izuku now lives in a house with Gray as Gray continues to, take care of him, almost, really. As Gray continues to ask him about he can summon more things, and Deku's just really not interested. He says Gray is the only one he needs, and he just continues doing this. And that's kind of how this turns out. This was almost like a part 0 or part 1. It was kind of weird, but, I liked it. It was cool. So, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll hit you with a part 2 if you guys want it. So, yeah, without any further ado, peace.